The meeting hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide enough to hold representatives from 48 different species. Jiho sat in the human delegation section, watching the endless debate about trade routes and resource allocation. His dark suit felt too warm under the artificial lights, but he kept his expression neutral and professional. Next to him, Hana reviewed documents on her tablet while Taiyang observed the room with the quiet alertness of a soldier. 200 years had passed since humans first made contact with alien life. 200 years since Earth joined the Galactic Council as its newest and most primitive member. In that time, humanity had worked hard to prove their worth among the stars. They took on jobs that other species refused. They solved problems that others called impossible. They went to places that made even the bravest aliens hesitate. Jiho remembered his first day as Earth's ambassador 5 years ago. He had been so hopeful then, so eager to make humanity's voice heard. He thought if humans just worked hard enough, contributed enough, sacrificed enough, the other species would see them as equals. Now he knew better, but he still tried. Someone had to speak for Earth. The current debate dragged on. The Velkari representative, a tall being with purple skin and 4 arms, complained about mining operations in the Kelta Belt. The asteroids there were rich with valuable minerals, but they were also unstable and dangerous. 3 Velkari miners had died last month when an asteroid exploded unexpectedly. "We cannot continue operations in such hazardous conditions," the Velkari said, his voice booming through the translation devices everyone wore. "The Kelta Belt should be abandoned." Jiho leaned forward slightly. He knew what was coming. Sure enough, Counselor Vexithara, a serpent-like alien from one of the oldest civilizations, turned her massive head toward the human section. "Perhaps the humans could take over the Kelta operations," she said smoothly. "They seem well suited for such dangerous work." There it was. The polite way of saying humans were expendable. Jiho had heard variations of this statement hundreds of times. Humans could explore the radiation zones. Humans could test the experimental technology. Humans could enter the war zones to retrieve the bodies. Always humans, always the dangerous jobs. "We would need to review the safety data first," Jiho said carefully, keeping his tone diplomatic, "and discuss proper compensation for the increased risk." Several council members made sounds that the translators rendered as dismissive laughter. Elder Rathnor, the Velkari's most senior counselor, fixed Jiho with an amused stare. "Compensation? You should be grateful for the opportunity to serve the council," Rathnor said. "Your species has contributed so little to galactic civilization. Taking on tasks others cannot is the least you can do." Hana's hand tightened on her tablet, but her face remained calm. Taiyang shifted almost imperceptibly in his seat. Jiho felt the familiar weight of frustration settle in his chest, but he simply nodded. "Of course, Counselor. We live to serve." The words tasted bitter, but he said them anyway. The meeting moved on to other topics. Jiho participated where appropriate, offering suggestions that were mostly ignored. When he proposed a new waste recycling system that could save the council millions of credits, 3 counselors checked their communication devices instead of listening. When Hana presented data showing more efficient patrol routes for trade security, the military committee thanked her politely and filed the report away without reading it. After the meeting, Jiho walked through the council station with his team. The corridors hummed with activity. Aliens of every shape and size moved past them, many not bothering to step aside for the humans. They had learned to simply navigate around others. "Did you see the power fluctuation during the meeting?" Hana asked quietly. "Section C is having problems again." "I noticed," Jiho replied. "Have our engineers been contacted?" "Yuna got a message an hour ago. They want her team to fix it." Of course they did. Yuna and her engineering crew maintained most of the council's critical infrastructure. The human woman had a gift for understanding complex systems that baffled even species with centuries more technological advancement. She worked 16-hour days keeping the aging station functional, crawling through maintenance tunnels too small for most other species and repairing systems too dangerous for others to approach. Jiho had recommended Yuna for a council engineering award last year. His recommendation was rejected without explanation. A Thranix engineer who had designed a new type of decorative lighting for the council chambers received the award instead. They passed by one of the research laboratories where Dr. Minho worked. Through the transparent walls, Jiho could see the scientist hunched over a complex equation display, his face tired but focused. Minho had recently solved a quantum physics problem that had stumped the galaxy's best minds for 3 decades. His solution had opened up new possibilities for faster-than-light communication. The Valkyrie had immediately classified his research and assigned a team of their own scientists to verify and improve his work. Minho's name would probably not appear in the final publication. He had not complained. Like most humans in council space, he had learned that recognition was not why they did the work. In the human quarters, Jiho found other Earth personnel preparing for their various assignments. Doyen, a mining specialist, was checking his equipment before heading to the outer reaches where solar radiation made most species sick within hours. Humans could tolerate it for weeks with proper protection. Nari, one of Earth's best mediators, reviewed files on a territorial dispute between 2 minor species. She would spend the next 3 months in a conflict zone, risking her life to prevent a war that neither party wanted, but both felt honor-bound to fight. Another productive day? Nari asked with a slight smile as Jiho entered the common area. Productive for everyone but us, Taiyang answered before Jiho could respond. We knew this would not be easy when we joined the council, Jiho said, pouring himself water from the dispenser. Change takes time. We must be patient. Patient, Hana repeated softly. We have been patient for 200 years, Ambassador. How much longer? Jiho had no answer for that. He looked around at his people, these humans who worked so hard for so little appreciation. They deserved better. Earth deserved better. But what could they do? Walk away from the stars? Return to their single planet and abandon everything they had worked for? The thought seemed impossible. Humanity had dreamed of the stars for thousands of years. Now that they were here, could they really give it up just because the other species looked down on them? We keep doing our best, Jiho finally said. That is all we can do. But late that night, alone in his quarters, Jiho stared out at the stars and wondered if their best would ever be enough for the Galactic Council. Or if humans were doomed to be forever seen as useful primitives, good enough to do the dirty work but never good enough to be truly respected. He did not know that in 3 days, everything would change. The Council would make one mistake too many, and humanity would make a decision that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. For now, Jiho simply watched the stars and hoped for a better tomorrow. The emergency council session was called at midnight station time. Jiho rushed to the chambers with Hana and Taiyang, all 3 of them having been pulled from sleep by urgent alerts. Something serious had happened, serious enough to summon every council member immediately. The meeting hall buzzed with anxious energy. Species that normally ignored each other were clustered in tight groups, speaking rapidly in their native languages. The translation devices struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. Jiho caught fragments as he took his seat. War, mobilization, billions at risk. Elder Rathnor called the session to order by striking his staff against the floor 3 times. The sound echoed through the chamber and silence fell immediately. The Valkyrie Empire and the Threnix Collective have broken off all diplomatic relations, Rathnor announced, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of grave concern. Both sides are mobilizing their fleets. Intelligence suggests we have perhaps 1 month before full-scale war begins. A wave of shocked sounds rippled through the chamber. The Valkyrie and Threnix had been rivals for centuries, but they had maintained an uneasy peace for the last 80 years. If they went to war now, with their current military capabilities, the devastation would spread across 12 star systems. Billions of civilians lived in the disputed territories. What triggered this? Someone asked. A mining accident in the border zone, Counselor Vexithera explained, her scales shimmering under the lights. A Valkyrie ship was destroyed. The Threnix deny responsibility. The Valkyrie demand justice. Neither side will back down. For the next hour, Jiho listened as various council members proposed solutions. Most involved choosing one side to support, which would only guarantee the war happened. A few suggested economic sanctions, which both empires were powerful enough to ignore. One counselor recommended doing nothing, letting them fight it out, but that would mean abandoning billions of innocent beings to die. Jiho had been studying this situation for years. The Valkyrie-Threnix rivalry was built on old grudges and cultural misunderstandings, not real incompatible interests. He had even written a detailed analysis of how to resolve it. Though no one had asked for his opinion, now watching the council fumble toward disaster, he realized this might be humanity's chance to finally prove their worth. He stood up. Counselors, if I may? Rathanor looked surprised that Jiho had spoken without being addressed first, but he nodded. The human representative wishes to speak. Very well. Jiho walked to the central platform, very aware that every eye in the chamber was on him. Hana gave him an encouraging nod. He took a breath and began. I have studied the Velkari-Threnix conflict extensively, he said, keeping his voice steady and clear. With respect, I believe both empires want to avoid war but feel honor-bound to appear strong. Neither side can back down without losing face among their people. We know this already, Vexithara said impatiently. Get to your point, human. The point is that we need a solution that allows both sides to claim victory while actually choosing peace, Jiho continued. He activated the holographic display and brought up his presentation. Earth has experience with similar situations. We have ended conflicts that seemed impossible to resolve. You also started many of those conflicts yourselves, a Threnix counselor interrupted. Why should we trust your judgment? Because we learned from our mistakes, Jiho replied. Sometimes those who have experienced war understand peace better than those who have only studied it. He outlined his proposal. It involved a neutral investigation of the mining accident, jointly funded by both sides. A temporary shared governance of the disputed territories with profits split equally, cultural exchange programs to build understanding between the two civilizations, and a face-saving ceremony where both leaders could claim they had defended their people's honor. Hana had helped him refine every detail. Suman, their best analyst, had run probability models showing an 87% chance of success if both sides agreed to the framework. It was elegant, fair, and most importantly, it would work. When Jiho finished presenting, there was a long silence. He allowed himself a small moment of hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was when the council would finally see that humans had something valuable to offer beyond manual labor and dangerous work. Then Rathanor started laughing. It began as a low rumble in his chest and grew louder. Soon, other counselors joined in. The sound filled the chamber and Jiho felt his face grow hot. You cannot be serious, Rathnor said when he finally controlled his laughter. You think we should follow advice from humans? From a species that still has wars on their own planet? From beings who achieved space travel only 2 centuries ago? Elder Counselor, the plan is sound, Jiho said, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. If you would just review the data? Vexthara's voice dripped with contempt. You are children playing at diplomacy. This is a matter for civilized species to handle. Your role, human, is to serve the council, not to lecture it. But billions of lives are at stake. Hana stood up, unable to stay silent. Does it matter where a good idea comes from if it saves lives? Sit down, Rathnor commanded. His voice was not loud, but it carried absolute authority. Humanity's contributions to this council are appreciated. You maintain our stations. You work our minds. You do the tasks we prefer not to do ourselves. But you are not our equals, and you are certainly not our teachers. Jiho felt something crack inside his chest. He had known, intellectually, that the council looked down on humans. But hearing it stated so bluntly, so publicly, was different than knowing it quietly. Around the chamber, he saw other counselors nodding in agreement. A few looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up in humanity's defense. We will implement the Velkari proposal, Rathnor declared, a show of force to make the Threnix back down. If they do not, we will support the Velkari military action. The Threnix are clearly at fault here. That will start the war, Jiho said quietly. Not prevent it. Your opinion is noted and dismissed, Vexthara said. Now, does anyone with actual authority have something to contribute? More laughter. Not from everyone, but from enough counselors that the message was clear. Humans were a joke. Their ideas were worthless. Their 200 years of service meant nothing. Taeyang stood and placed a hand on Jiho's shoulder. Ambassador, we should go. Jiho looked at the holographic display still showing his proposal. All those hours of work and hope reduced to entertainment for species who thought themselves superior. He looked at Rathnor, at Vexithara, at all the counselors who had used humanity's labor for 2 centuries while giving nothing but contempt in return. Counselor Rathnor, Jiho said softly, I came here 5 years ago believing that respect was something we could earn through hard work and dedication. I see now that I was wrong. You were indeed wrong, Rathnor agreed. Respect is given to those who deserve it by right of their civilization's age and achievements. You humans are too young, too primitive. Perhaps in another 1,000 years you will be ready to offer opinions. Until then, know your place. I see, Jiho said. He looked at Hana and Taeyang, and something passed between them. An understanding. A decision that did not need words. We understand now. They walked out of the chamber together. Behind them, the council moved on to other topics, having already forgotten about the humans who had dared to speak above their station. They did not notice the quiet determination in Jiho's steps, or the way Hana held her head high despite the humiliation, or the cold calculation in Taeyang's eyes. They did not notice because they had never really seen humans at all. That would prove to be their greatest mistake. The message appeared in Elder Rathnor's communication queue 3 days after the emergency session. It was short, formal, and completely unexpected. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Jiho, Earth Delegation. Rathnor read it twice, then dismissed it with a wave of one hand. Some kind of emotional outburst, no doubt. The humans would calm down and return to their duties soon enough. They needed the Council more than the Council needed them. Where else could primitive Earth go? They had no other allies in the galaxy. But Jiho did not send another message. And humans did not return to their duties. On the 4th day, Yuna and her engineering team abandoned their maintenance posts across the Council station. They did not make announcements or file complaints. They simply packed their tools, organized their technical documents, and walked away. The station manager only noticed they were gone when a cooling system in Sector 7 began making unusual sounds. He sent a message to Yuna's quarters asking her to check it. The message bounced back. Recipient not found. He went to the human engineering section and found it empty. Every workstation was clean and cleared. Equipment that belonged to the humans was gone. Equipment that belonged to the station was neatly labeled and organized. A note was left on the main console. All systems currently functional. Maintenance schedules and protocols are in the station database. Good luck. The station manager felt the first trickle of concern. He told himself it was fine. The station had been built by other species. Surely they could maintain it themselves. On the 7th day, Doyun and every human miner in the Kelta belt loaded into their ships and left. They departed so quietly that the mining supervisors did not notice until the next shift, when no humans reported for duty. The dangerous asteroids that humans had been working for decades sat untouched. Other species looked at the hazardous conditions and decided they could wait for safer technology to be developed before resuming operations there. Operations also ceased in the radiation zones, the toxic environments, the unstable regions where humans had been the only ones willing to work. Entire resource extraction programs ground to a halt overnight. On the 10th day, Dr. Minho submitted his laboratory access badge and packed up his research. His team of human scientists did the same across the Council's research facilities. They took nothing that did not belong to them, but they took everything that did. 20 years of experimental data, theoretical work, and collaborative projects simply vanished as the humans who had been doing most of the actual work departed. Velkari scientist who had been listed as co-researcher on one of Minho's projects found himself staring at empty data files he could not understand. Minho had done 90% of the work, but the Velkari had been happy to take credit. Now, looking at the gaps in his knowledge, he realized he could not even continue the project alone. On the 14th day, Nari canceled all her mediation assignments. She was currently in the middle of negotiations between two species who had been at each other's throats for 3 years. The talks had been making progress. Without her careful guidance, the delegates started arguing again within hours. By the next day, they had both stormed out and returned to their home worlds, the conflict unsolved. Similar situations played out across the galaxy. Human mediators quietly closed their files and went home. Peace talks collapsed. Careful negotiations fell apart. No one had realized how many of the Council's diplomatic successes had depended on human patience and skill. On the 18th day, Taeyang issued recall orders to all human military personnel serving in Council operations. Peacekeepers returned from conflict zones. Military advisors abandoned their posts. Pilots left their assigned fleets. They did not break any contracts because they had never been under formal military command. They had been volunteers offering their services. Now they were unvolunteering. A Threnix general found himself missing 30% of his operational staff overnight. The humans had been handling logistics, communications, and tactical planning. Without them, his command structure started falling apart. On the 23rd day, human trade ships began their final runs. Merchant captains delivered their current cargoes, collected their payments, and then set course for Earth. The extensive human trading network, which had connected dozens of smaller worlds to the main council economy, simply disappeared. Independent stations that had relied on human traders to bring supplies found themselves cut off. On the 27th day, the council attempted to contact Earth directly. They sent formal communications to the human government requesting an explanation. The response came from Earth's Prime Minister. Ambassador Jiho speaks for Earth in all matters related to the Galactic Council. We support his decisions completely. They tried to contact Jiho. His communication device was turned off. They sent messages to Hana, Taiyang, Yuna, Minho, and every other human they had contact information for. Some messages bounced back. Others were read but not answered. The few responses they got were all the same. We are no longer needed. You made that clear. On the 30th day, the last humans left council space. A passenger ship carrying the final group of Earth citizens departed from the central station. Jiho stood at the viewing window, watching the station shrink behind them. Hana stood beside him, her expression calm but sad. "Do you think they understand yet?" she asked. "No," Jiho replied. "They will not understand for a while. They still think we need them more than they need us." "Do you think we did the right thing?" Jiho considered this. He thought about 200 years of service, 200 years of being treated as useful tools rather than valued partners. He thought about the contemptuous laughter in the council chamber and the casual dismissal of human lives and ideas. "I think we did the only thing that allowed us to keep our dignity," he said finally. "We gave them our best and they threw it back in our faces. Staying would have meant accepting that we are less than them. I would rather walk alone with respect than crawl beside them with none." Taiyang joined them at the window. Behind them, the ship was full of humans. Engineers, scientists, miners, soldiers, merchants, diplomats. All of them were going home. Some looked sad. Some looked angry, but most looked relieved. The council sent another message, Taiyang reported. "They are demanding we return immediately." "Demanding?" Hana raised an eyebrow. "Not requesting?" "Demanding," Taiyang confirmed. "They seem to think they have authority over us." Jiho almost smiled. "Almost. What did you tell them?" "I told them no." Taiyang's voice was flat and final. Just one word, but it carried the weight of 200 years of accumulated grievances. They did not respond well. "They are threatening to sanction Earth." "Let them try," Jiho said. "Earth is self-sufficient. We do not need their technology or their trade. We never did. We just wanted to be part of something larger than ourselves, to belong." "And now?" Hana asked. "Now we know that belonging means nothing if it requires us to be lesser." Jiho answered. "We will find our own way. We will build our own future. And if the Galactic Council ever learns to see us as equals, perhaps someday we can talk again. But we will not beg. Not anymore." The ship jumped to faster than light speed and the council station disappeared completely. Every human ship made the same jump, all of them heading to the same destination. Home. Earth. The small blue planet that had dreamed of the stars and found them beautiful, but cold. In the council chambers, Elder Rathnor finally began to worry. 30 days had passed, and not a single human remained in council space. Every human outpost was abandoned. Every human volunteer was gone. The silence from Earth was absolute. For 200 years, humans had been everywhere in the galaxy, doing everything that needed to be done. Now they were nowhere. The absence was starting to feel very large. Rathnor told himself it would be fine. Humans were just one species out of 48. Their loss would barely be noticed. He was wrong, and he would learn exactly how wrong very soon. The Velkari-Thranix War began exactly as Jiho had predicted. 6 weeks after humanity's departure, the Velkari fleet launched a show of force that the Thranix interpreted as an act of aggression. The Thranix responded with military action. Within days, the conflict exploded into full-scale war across 4 star systems. Elder Rathnor watched the casualty reports with growing horror. 1 billion dead in the first month, 2 billion by the second month, 4.7 billion by the end of the third month. The numbers kept climbing, and nothing the council did seemed to slow the killing. He remembered Jiho's proposal, the one he had laughed at, the elegant solution that would have let both sides claim victory while choosing peace. He had dismissed it as the naive thoughts of primitives. Now he wondered if maybe the primitives had understood something that the advanced civilizations had forgotten. But the war was just the beginning of the Council's problems. Indar, the fourth week after humanity's departure, the life support system in Sector 12 of the main Council station failed. Emergency teams rushed to fix it, only to discover that the problem was in a subsystem that only Yuna's team had really understood. The alien engineers stared at the complex machinery, trying to remember how the humans had maintained it. They managed a temporary fix, but it failed again a week later. This time 20 beings died before emergency evacuations were completed. The investigation revealed that the entire station's infrastructure was far older and more fragile than anyone had realized. The humans had been constantly repairing and reinforcing it, keeping it functional through skill and hard work. Without them, the decay was becoming visible. More systems began to fail. Power fluctuations became common. Water recycling had problems. Air filtration showed concerning variations in quality. The station that had stood for 300 years suddenly seemed to be falling apart. Why did we not know the station was in such poor condition? Fexithara demanded at an emergency maintenance meeting. The humans never filed reports saying it was critical, the chief engineer explained weakly. They just fixed things. We assumed everything was fine because nothing broke. They fixed everything. Fexithara realized, her scales darkening with anger at herself. We never noticed because they never let anything break. And we never thanked them for it. The mining operations faced similar problems. Without humans willing to work in dangerous conditions, production dropped by 60% across the board. The Kelta Belt operations, which had provided crucial rare minerals, sat completely idle. No other species was willing to risk the unstable asteroids that humans had worked for decades. Substitutes and alternatives were tried, but they were expensive and slow. The galaxy had become dependent on the steady flow of resources that human labor had provided. Now that flow had stopped, and the economic impact rippled outward through every council system. The research facilities struggled even more dramatically. Dr. Minho and his colleagues had been involved in hundreds of projects. Without them, those projects stalled or failed. The lead scientists, who had been happy to take credit for human work, now discovered they could not actually do that work themselves. A project on quantum communication that had been 90% complete sat frozen because the one person who understood the critical algorithms had been a human, researcher named Suman. She was now back on Earth, and she was not answering messages. A promising medical research program collapsed because the human doctor who had been running the actual experiments was gone. The alien researchers who had been supervising did not actually know how to perform the procedures. Project after project fell apart as the Council realized that humans had not been assisting with research. They had been leading it. The diplomatic situation became catastrophic. Without human mediators, conflicts that had been contained for years suddenly reignited. Small disputes became major incidents. Trade disagreements turned into threats of military action. In the first 3 months, 16 new conflicts emerged across Council space. Nari had been mediating 7 different disputes when she left. All 7 collapsed into violence or complete breakdown of relations within weeks. Other human mediators had been handling dozens more. The Council's diplomatic corps tried to fill the gaps, but they lacked the patience and skill that humans had brought to negotiations. Why were humans so good at mediation? A junior Threnix diplomat asked his supervisor. Because they came from a world of conflict and learned how to make peace, the supervisor answered bitterly. And we mocked them for it. We saw their history of war as weakness. We did not see it as experience. The military situation was equally bad. Taeyang's recall of human personnel had left massive holes in Council defense operations. Humans had been doing much of the logistics, planning, and tactical coordination. The Council militaries had thought of them as helpers, not realizing they were the foundation of effective operations. Fleet movements became confused. Supply lines snarled. Communications broke down. Several Council species had actually stopped maintaining their own military support infrastructure years ago, depending entirely on human volunteers to handle it. Now those species found themselves nearly defenseless. The trade networks collapsed most visibly of all. Human merchants had been the connectors, the ones willing to travel to small out-of-the-way stations that larger species considered unprofitable. When they left, dozens of minor worlds found themselves cut off from the galactic economy. A space station that served as a trading hub for 7 different species watched its daily ship traffic drop from 40 vessels to 3. 90% of those ships had been human-operated. The station's economy crashed within a month and thousands lost their jobs. Similar stories played out across the galaxy. The human trading network had been so extensive and so reliable that everyone took it for granted. Its absence left holes that no one else seemed interested in filling. By the 5th month, the council met in emergency session. The chamber was quieter than usual. Many councilors had stopped attending because they were dealing with crises in their own territories. The building itself had problems. The lights flickered. The temperature control was erratic. The holographic displays were glitching. "We must bring the humans back," a councilor said. Others murmured agreement. "How?" Rathnor asked tiredly. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. "We sent messages. We sent delegations. Earth refuses to respond meaningfully. The few responses we get all say the same thing, no. Then we demand they return," Vexthara suggested. "We are the Galactic Council. We have authority, do we?" a quiet voice asked. Hyun, the Dendari councilor who had abstained from voting against Jiho's proposal, stood slowly. "Do we have any authority over a sovereign world that chooses not to participate in our council?" "They need us," someone argued, "do they?" Hyun looked around the crumbling chamber. "Earth seems to be doing fine. We are the ones falling apart. Our station is breaking down. Our economy is struggling. Our diplomatic efforts are failing. Our research has stalled. We are fighting a war that is costing billions of lives. A war that could have been prevented if we had listened to human advice." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. No one wanted to admit the truth, but it hung in the air like smoke. "We treated humans as servants," Hyun continued softly. "We used their labor and gave nothing in return except contempt. We took credit for their work. We mocked their ideas. We dismissed their worth. And now we are surprised that they left? They should have known their place," Rathnor said. But his voice lacked conviction. "They did know their place," Hyun replied. "They knew they deserved better than we gave them, so they found their place somewhere else." Away from us, Elder Rathnor looked around the chamber. He saw failing systems and worried faces. He thought about the war grinding on. He thought about the humans who had worked so hard for so long, asking for so little. He thought about how he had laughed at Jiho's proposal. They had to fix this. Somehow they had to bring humanity back. The galaxy needed them. But first they would have to admit they had been wrong. For species that had considered themselves superior for thousands of years. That might be the hardest thing of all. 1 year after humanity's departure, a council delegation arrived at Earth. The ship was impressive, carrying representatives from 12 of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Elder Rathnor led them, looking diminished somehow despite his size. Councilor Vexthara accompanied him, her scales dull with stress. Even the Threnics had sent someone, though the war with the Velkari still raged on. Earth's orbital defense stations tracked their approach but did not interfere. The ship was allowed to land at the designated diplomatic facility outside Geneva. A simple building, nothing like the Grand Council chambers they were used to. The delegation disembarked and found themselves facing human security personnel, who checked their credentials with professional courtesy, but no warmth. Jiho was waiting in a small conference room. He was no longer ambassador. He had retired from formal diplomatic service 6 months ago. But when Earth's government asked him to meet with the council delegation, he agreed. Hana came with him. Now Earth's prime diplomat, Taeyang stood by the door, officially retired from military service but still protective of his friends. The council delegation entered the room and stopped. They had expected something grand, some display meant to impress them. Instead, they found a simple room with a table, chairs, and windows showing the mountains beyond. Jiho sat at one end of the table looking calm and rested in a way he never had during his years on the council station. "Elder Rathnor," Jiho said, standing and bowing slightly, old habits from diplomatic training.
"Councilor Vexthara."
"Please sit." The delegation sat awkwardly. They were used to dominating rooms with their presence. Here they felt small. Rathnor began with the prepared speech. He talked about the council's history, about unity and cooperation, about the importance of all species working together. His voice was practiced and smooth, hitting all the diplomatic notes. But Jiho heard the desperation underneath. Finally, Rathnor got to the point. The Galactic Council formally invites humanity to return. We are prepared to offer significant concessions. He activated a holographic display showing the offer. Full voting rights on all council matters, access to advanced technology, territorial rights to several star systems, priority in trade agreements, public apology for past oversights, a seat on the council's leadership committee. It was everything humans had wanted for 200 years. Everything they had hoped to earn through hard work and dedication. Offered now freely, because the council was desperate. Jiho looked at the display for a long moment. Hana sat beside him, her expression unreadable. Taiyang watched from his position by the door. "This is very generous," Jiho said finally. "May I ask what prompted this change in the council's position?" Vexthara spoke up. "We have come to understand that humanity's contributions were more significant than we initially recognized. Your absence has created challenges that we are finding difficult to address." "Challenges," Hana repeated. "Is that what you call the 4.7 billion dead in the Velkari-Thranix War? The war that started exactly as Ambassador Jiho predicted it would. The war that could have been prevented if you had listened to his proposal?" Vexthara's scales flushed darker. "That is, yes, among other things." "Your infrastructure is failing," Taeyang said from the door. "Your research has stalled. Your economy is struggling. Your diplomatic efforts are collapsing. You do not want us back because you respect us. You want us back because you need us." "Does it matter?" Rathanor asked, and for the first time Jiho heard real emotion in his voice. "Does it matter why we are offering if the offer is genuine? Billions of beings are suffering. Our civilization is fracturing. If human pride requires an apology, we apologize. If it requires technology and territory, we offer them. What more do you want?" "Respect," Jiho said quietly. "We wanted respect. Not when you were desperate. Not when you needed us. We wanted you to see us as equals when we were standing beside you, working hard, trying to help. That was all we ever wanted." "We were wrong," Rathnor admitted. The words seemed to cost him something. "We looked at your youth as a species and saw primitiveness. We saw your history of conflict and assumed violence. We did not see your innovation, your determination, your skill. We used you and we did not value you. For that I apologize. The council apologizes." It was everything Jiho had dreamed of hearing during his 5 years as ambassador. A sincere apology from Elder Rathnor himself. Recognition of humanity's worth. Admission of the council's mistakes, but it was too late. Respect offered in desperation was not real respect. It was just another transaction. Another negotiation where the council wanted something and was willing to pay for it. "I appreciate your honesty, Elder Counselor," Jiho said. "Truly, but I cannot accept your offer." "Why not?" Vexthara demanded. "We are giving you everything you wanted." "You are giving us what we wanted a year ago," Hana corrected. "But we have had a year to think. A year to realize something important. We were so eager to be accepted by you that we accepted being lesser. We took the dangerous jobs, the thankless work, the dismissive treatment because we thought if we just worked hard enough, you would see our worth. But that was never going to happen." Taeyang added, "Because you had already decided we were beneath you. Nothing we did would change that. If we fixed 1,000 problems, you would just assume that was our role. If we solved impossible research, you would take credit. If we saved lives through mediation, you would ignore us." "We have changed," Rathnor insisted. "The past year has taught us, it has taught you that you need us," Jiho interrupted gently. "That is not the same as respecting us. You respect our usefulness. That is still not seeing us as equals." The room fell silent. The council delegation looked at each other uncertain. This was not how they had expected the meeting to go. They had thought humans would jump at the chance to return with better conditions. A younger council member, one of the Dendari, spoke up. "Then what would you have us do? The galaxy is falling apart. Beings are dying. If you will not help, what happens to them?" "That is a very good question," Hana said. She looked at Jiho and something passed between them, a decision they had already made, but had not yet shared. Jiho stood and walked to the window. Outside, Earth stretched beautiful and blue. His home, humanity's home, the planet they had nearly destroyed once and then learned to save. The world that taught them the hardest lessons about survival, cooperation, and growth. We will help, Jiho said, turning back to the delegation, but not as members of your council. Not as your servants or your subordinates or even your equals within your system. That system is broken. It is built on hierarchy and assumptions of superiority. We will not return to it. Then how? Rathnor asked. Humanitarian aid, Hana explained. We will send medical teams to help civilians affected by the war. We will provide food and supplies to refugees. We will offer rescue and evacuation services to those trapped in conflict zones. We will send engineers to help repair life support systems and critical infrastructure, Taiyang continued, but only to prevent loss of life. We will not maintain your systems for you. You will learn to do it yourselves. We will share research that has humanitarian applications, Jiho added. Medical advances, agricultural improvements, environmental protection, things that help beings live better lives. But, Vexthara asked because she heard the unspoken condition. But we will not rejoin the council, Jiho said firmly. We will not resume resource extraction. We will not staff your militaries. We will not mediate your disputes or maintain your trade networks or do any of the 1,000 other tasks we once did. You will need to learn to do those things yourselves. That will take years, Rathnor protested. Decades, perhaps. The damage in the meantime will teach you the value of what you took for granted, Jiho finished. We are not abandoning you to die. We will help save lives, but we will not save you from the consequences of your own choices. You built a civilization on the backs of those you considered lesser. Now you will learn what it means to stand on your own. The delegation sat in stunned silence. This was not negotiation. This was humanity laying down terms. Take it or leave it. If we agree to this, Rathnor said slowly, is there any possibility that humanity might rejoin the council in the future? Jiho considered this carefully. Perhaps. If the council learns to rebuild itself on a foundation of mutual respect rather than hierarchy, if you can create a true union of equals, where a species' worth is not measured by their age or their technology, but by their character and contributions. If you can do that, then maybe someday we will talk about rejoining. But not today, Hana added. Not until we are certain we will be valued, not just used. The meeting ended shortly after. The delegation left looking smaller than when they arrived. They had come hoping to restore the old system. Instead, they left knowing they would have to build something new. As their ship lifted off, Jiho watched from the window. Hana joined him and Taiyang stood nearby. Do you think they will learn? Hana asked. Some of them will, Jiho replied. Hyun of the Dendari already understands. Others will in time. Some never will. But that is no longer our problem to solve. And us? Taeyang asked. What does humanity do now? Jiho smiled, and it was genuine and peaceful. We walk our own path. We explore the stars on our terms. We build relationships with species who see us as equals from the start. We help where we can. But we never again accept being treated as lesser. We have learned what we are worth. We will never forget it. Years later, a new galactic council would form, built on different principles. True equality, mutual respect, shared governance. Humanity would be invited to join as a founding member. Whether they accepted would be a decision for future generations. But on that day, watching Earth spin peacefully below, Jiho felt no regret. They had walked away with dignity. They had refused to beg. And in doing so, they had shown not just the galaxy but themselves what humanity was truly worth. Sometimes the strongest choice was not to fight harder, but to walk away. To say no, to demand better, and to mean it.